March meeting of the board to order. As always, we begin by pledging to our flag. We pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. I'll just remind you of a few simple rules we have. Or some information you will not be aware of. All of our meetings are being videoed by these two gentlemen from Susquehanna, and we posted it on the website. We started this late last year. We thank them very much for their help. And the public has a right to record this meeting, but they must announce it at the beginning of the meeting what they're doing. Recording, I mean they can record it both with a camera or just with a recorder. And finally, please use the microphone to address the board or address the audience, or actually both, of course. Because otherwise, it doesn't. We don't hear it very well on the video. So please remember to come up and also tell us who you are and where you live. I also want to indicate that we just have come from a executive session, started at 6:30, on a legal issue. We're going to announce more about that meeting later on in the meeting. So we'll go to our agenda. The executive session and the specific reason for it is stated on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for our February 4th meeting.
So moved.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's also announced that the board received a packet of information, excuse me, about this thick, and the information in here relates to the items on the agenda. So we're supposed to really review this, ask questions before we come to the meeting, so we're prepared to discuss the items on the agenda. The second item on the agenda is the treasurer's report as of February 2015. It's summarized on the agenda sheet. I'll entertain a motion to approve the February treasurer's report.
So moved.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 6 is opening public comment. Anything you want to talk about, within reason, of course. I always say that. You can talk about. We'll ask you to come up to the microphone and provide us your name and your address, please. There's an opportunity later on in the meeting for a public comment as well. Item number 7, ordinances and resolutions. Turn it over to our township manager, Todd Blackman.
Yeah, actually we don't have any ordinances or resolutions. But the next thing, we have a few things.
Okay. Subdivision and land development. Todd?
First item you have is a request from Chestnut Commerce for a couple of waivers for their subdivision plan. The 3 specific waivers are to reduce the number of concrete monuments to 2. The Planning Commission kind of let that open-ended to leave that up to the engineer, the township engineer, after we identify where existing monuments are. So that number may change. So that should really reduce the number of concrete monuments that's acceptable to the township engineer. Showing location of the critical environmental area requirement and location of the natural features requirement. And the reason for the request is the full tract you can see here is outlined in red. This here is Elm Drive. They're looking to subdivide the parcel that's in yellow, and then this that's in white would remain. And it's simply a subdivision. There's no land development at this point in time. There's no proposal for any buildings, no construction of any sorts. So at the time, when there's a land development plan, is when they would address the critical environmental areas, natural features, and so forth. This has been through staff as well as planning commission, both of which recommend to the board that you approve the waiver request.
I want to entertain a motion to approve the waiver request.
I'll make a motion to approve it, with the exception on the monuments to include whatever our engineer
It's acceptable to
recommends.
engineer.
That's good.
I'll second that.
Discussion. I have one item. We're waiving the critical environmental requirements, understandably so. But I think there should be a note on the plan indicating that when a development plan comes in, or the next step is made, that they are to adhere to those regulations. There's a stream that runs along Toller Road here, and our regulations call for a 100-foot buffer, minimum buffer between the top of the bank, moving outward from the stream. And this is a protected stream. This is a Deer Creek watershed. And, it's important to do that, so it doesn't escape our interest. Can we include that in the motion? Just without making much of it here.
Yeah, what you're asking for is that on the subdivision plan, there be a note added that when the land development plan comes through, that they address those two items.
It's a footnote, I mean, do you want a motion to that effect?
Well, if that's what you want to include, I mean, Jeff and Bill would have to.
I'd like to just take Jeff's motion and revise it to include that one item.
Well, you have a motion and a second on the floor. You should just ask if they're willing to amend their motion.
I kind of have already asked that.
Yeah.
I'm willing to amend my second on
Okay, well,
Yeah, Phil, I don't think you have any issue with that.
But the planners actually recommended that there be a note added that there's no building approval with this. Which one of the two do you want us to do? Or do you want us to do
I
both?
do both.
good vote.
Thanks. Okay.
That's most important. All right, Phil?
Yep, that's fine. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote on the motion as amended.
that. Aye.
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 What's next, Brian?
Next item is a final subdivision plan for Dr. William Solomon, Boyer Road, New Freedom. What you basically have right now is, if you look at the outside of this entire tract, that's what currently exists. If you look at this, it's identified as parcel 1. That parcel has a preliminary subdivision plan approved. They haven't followed through on the final at this point in time. And I believe that's for 8 building rights. So when that materializes, you would then be left with the remainder of this tract. What he's proposing to do is follow Boyer Road and subdivide this into two parcels. We verified the number of development rights. There's adequate development rights for it. This subdivision will use all of them up. There will be no additional ones. This here will remain, this will be separate. And it is kind of a confusing thing because this is a preliminary subdivision plan and there hasn't been a final. But we believe, if you look at the notes, and I can bring up the other plans, you all have a set in front of you. I think we have it detailed well and have it documented as to what the history of this subdivision is. It's been through staff review and it's been through Township Planning Commission. Both groups recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors, but we would ask that you add the condition that the outstanding comments on the C.S. Davidson review letter be completed before the plan is recorded. Also with that, we have, I'm going to talk also about the waiver requests, which go in conjunction with that. Again, these are reviewed by staff and planning commission. Both recommend to the board that they approve these waiver requests. The first scale of the plan, 1 inch equals 100 feet or greater. Critical environmental areas shown on plan and natural features, show existing contours, show wetlands, and sewer feasibility study. Again, there's no proposed development on either of these parcels. They have existing buildings, farm buildings and houses on them. So we don't think we need to get into the critical environmental area and everything because none of that's going to be disturbed. And then the third thing, and this is more of a formality, again, because there's no construction plan at this point, we'll be sending in the DEP the planning waiver and non-building declaration, which is actually in the form of a resolution number 2015-06. Does anyone have any questions?
One question. Is the Pennsylvania Ag Security aware of the subdivision, and are they okay with it?
They are aware of it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was discussed at the meeting.
They're aware of it, are they in agreement with it?
I have not seen anything. Megan's not here, who handles the plan. She would know quicker than I would.
They have a 52-acre minimum lot size for agricultural use, and these
Yeah.
parcels are both,
Yeah, they're both well over that.
so I don't know how they work, but that needs to be.
I know it's been discussed, and I don't recall if we actually received a letter from them. I'd have to double check with Megan. You can make that a condition if you want, that we receive verification from them that it's acceptable.
Go with that.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to the fact to approve this based on the fact that we get a letter from the Ag Preservation that they were acceptable with it.
And the CS Davidson comments?
Yes.
All ready to vote?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Well, I have a question for the lawyer. Dr. Solomon is my brother. I have no financial interest in his life or his property or anything that has to do with him. But we need 3 votes. Am I correct?
Well, what you're asking me is whether it's necessary for you to,
I prefer to include myself just for the appearance.
because of a conflict. I would suggest that you've done the right thing by disclosing the potential conflict, but you're not a member of his immediate family. He is not a child or a dependent or a spouse of yours, so I would suggest that you can vote for approval or disapproval of this plan.
Plus, I have no financial interest at all.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
But if there was just 2 votes, it wouldn't pass.
That's correct.
And we also need action then on the waiver request as well as the
Yes.
resolution.
We've heard the waivers. Somebody want to make a motion that we approve the waivers as read?
I'll make a motion that we approve the waivers as read.
I'll second that.
I'm going to vote, but again, I just thought because of the 2 votes wouldn't pass, and I have no financial interest. So, Bill, let's vote.
Yeah, I vote aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Next item.
Oh, and also the resolution for the DEP
Yes.
plan.
I make motion that we approve the DEP planning waiver and non-building declaration.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's it for that plan? The next item C, subdivision land development plan extensions for Chris Auto Body.
Yeah, these, it's 4 of them. It's Chris
Messina.
Auto Body,
Yeah.
Messina Joseph, and Josephine Messina, which is Messina Plaza on Manchester Street in Glen Rock. Fritz Auto Body is down here at Commerce Drive. Heathcote Glen 2 Phase 3, which is Ascot Drive, Shrewsbury, and then the Taunton Road Venture just, if you want, you're comfortable with it, with these 3-month extensions, I would ask that you just do one motion for all of them, unless you want to do them individually. I've given you the outstanding items, several of them are waiting on outside agencies, NPDES permits, bonding, and so forth.
I'll make a motion that we approve the extensions for all 4 of the developments.
I'll second it.
Call for any discussion, any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Vote aye.
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 Reports. Each month we get reports from various members of our staff and others. Start with the manager, Todd Ziegler.
The only thing I want to talk about that's on the report is just to make everyone aware, the township contracted with a consulting firm from Lancaster County called Land Studies, and we're taking a look at the township's green infrastructure and to try to prioritize projects to make improvements with our stormwater runoff, and also tying in our park systems with maybe the county parks or township parks. Most of that work's been completed, and we were shooting for March 18th this month at the Planning Commission for a presentation to be given to the Planning Commission, and then following that meeting, then forwarding it then on to the Board of Supervisors at their April 1st meeting. So I just want to make everyone aware that we're working on that plan, and it will be available to review at both of those meetings. The only other thing I have, I want to address, and Paul, I just learned about this about 5 o'clock this evening, so I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it. Exelon, which I believe is the owner of Holtwood Dam,
Yes.
they have, I believe it's going to be a 15-year program, but they're pumping a good bit of grant money into the neighboring townships, counties. And the purpose of it is to allow the York County Conservation District in our county to, and I believe in Lancaster County, the county commissioners are handling it, and they don't quite know what's happening over there. But here it's going to be the York County Conservation District. They're going to be accepting grant applications to York County municipalities for stormwater improvement projects. Talking to Jeff Shue, who's our engineer and is also working with Land Studies, who's working on this green infrastructure plan. The grant application, they just learned, is closing March 20th. And they're suggesting that we apply for some grant funding. It's a non-match, so whatever we get, we don't have to match it. And Jeff is recommending that we apply for some funding down in the area of 851, just on the east side of 83. He estimates that it'll be about $1,000 between he and Land Studies to pull everything together, and he would recommend that we apply for $50,000. So I know I'm just laying this on you now, but I just learned about it at 5 o'clock this evening. So if the board's okay with that, I would ask for authorization for them to move forward with submitting that grant application.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
We have some questions, I think. So they're going to prepare the application, including graphics,
Correct.
and then you're going to submit it on behalf of the board to the Conservation District.
Correct.
So you don't need any more approval from us, other than keep us informed.
Correct.
Okay. How about that little area over there next to the DAC development off of Miller Park Road?
I can ask about
Can we
that.
apply for 2?
I'll ask. I don't know. I know Jeff and Kelly were focused in on that 851.
I don't want to take away from that project. To tell the audience, you know, as you go east on 851, you go under 83, and then on the left, there's a tributary to Deer Creek. The headwaters of Deer Creek. It's on your left. It's a wide riparian area, and Stonebridge, the entrance of Stonebridge goes over that area. So it's a very broad floodplain. It's about a mile long. It goes all the way down to where the stream goes under the road. And it's kind of like the front lawn of all that commercial commercial development. And it's a lovely area, but it needs to be improved and enhanced upon wetlands, and so it's constructed, maybe a trail system. And we're interested in getting the owner of the subdivision or of the commercial area to join with us as a partner. So that's where we're headed with this. It's a good opportunity. So, any questions or comments? Okay. So, just check with Jeff about that once. There's a small area, as you go into Miller Park, which is right next to the library and Lutheran Homes, Miller Park's 22 acres. And on the right, as you enter that park, there's some stormwater management facilities and some restored springs. And there's a high berm that makes a nice trail system, goes through that. And it's controlled by a homeowners association for the DAC development. That's where the daycare center is and the dentist. So there's some interest in developing that, or maybe not developing it, but in improving it for a wildlife area with a trail system going through. So just check with him, but we don't want to diminish the application for the 851 if this is going to do that.
Okay. I'll ask him, but I'll make sure that he can.
So we're very much interested in it. We have a motion and a second.
We don't have either.
Oh, I'll make a motion. We, what are we doing here now?
That's for the Exelon.
Okay, the
grant
application
for
just for
50,000.
that. I make a motion that we ask our engineer and whoever else he needs to help him put together an application for this grant, for the area along 851, which features Deer Creek.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Anything else, Doug?
Not under manager now.
You wear many hats, huh? Okay, sanitary sewer, the update.
Yeah, we have two things that we need to act on this evening. The first thing will be a change order, number 1, for the sites and sanitary sewer phase 3. It's in the amount of $2,400, which was for larger pipe than what was spec. So that would be the first request. And we should act on that separately, which is to approve the change order of $2,400.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second. All in favor?
I vote aye.
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 Second item then is application for payment number 1, which includes that change order. The amount of the request is $190,508.25. That's what the payment would be, and we would be retaining $10,026.75 as retainage until the project is completed. There's some additional work, but like I reported last month, everything's installed. They have a little bit of air testing to do when the weather breaks a little bit. And then we have all the restoration work to do in the spring. What I will note is this $190,508 will come out of the Community Development Block Grant that they received, which is a total of $200,000.
And the county has to come down, they're gonna approve the site.
Actually, they reviewed and approved this application for payment before it was sent to us. So the county's okay with it.
All right, so we need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion. It's basically telling the county that we're in agreement with this payment amount. And it's been reviewed by our engineer as well as county.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the payment.
I'll make a motion to approve the payment.
I'll second.
I vote aye.
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 Last thing I have here, if you recall, Barry Taylor, who owns property at 3137 and 3139 West Clearview Drive, just outside of Glen Rock, Again, this is in Sitesland, it's in phase 1 and 2. It's about a year and a half ago now, we filed a lien against his property in the amount of approximately $36,000 for the 2 sewer connections because he had not made any payments. He's been in touch with me within the last month. He'd like to take care of the lien. I had a conversation with him, sent him a letter with a couple of options. One option I thought would be a possibility is that he could bring his payment up that it's current on both properties and continue with it being current. However, in the meantime, I talked with the solicitor. One thing you have to keep in mind is when there's a lien placed against the property, it states X amount of dollars and so forth, and when you release that lien and state that it's satisfied, you don't provide a whole list of documents to explain the history and why. It simply says it's been satisfied. So, and the solicitor can correct me if I'm wrong, but he advises against us doing that type of payment thing and then doing the release because the lien is there. He either needs to pay it off in full to have it released, or if he's not ready to do that at this point in time, I know there were some emails back and forth. If he brings his account current, because as you know, since the lien was filed, there's 6% interest per year applied to that balance on top of what he's already paying for the loan. If he brings his account current and continues to make it current, there will not be accruing interest from that point forward. So, I mean, there is a way that if he's not ready to pay it off at this point in time, that he could at least eliminate that accruing interest. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
Not much. Payment plan is fine, of course, but the lien doesn't get removed until the resident has paid off the lien. It's that simple.
And you advise him that? You put that in writing to Barry or call?
Yes, I will. I called and left him a message,
Call first.
and I thought it would probably be this, but I will follow up with a letter.
So there's no action to be taken on this matter at this time. Moving ahead. Our solicitor.
Mr. Chairman, other than the written communications I've had with you this month, I don't have any written report.
Thank you. The next report will be the zoning officer, who is also the code enforcement and sewage enforcement officer for this township. He has given us a detailed report of his activity over the last month. Any questions or comments? Moving on. We have a report from our maintenance department, which cites or reviews their activity for the month. They're people of few words. They do a good job with the township.
I will just add that our budget for salt for 2015 is $85,000. To date, we've spent $50,000, which leaves us about $35,000. Which what we have has to get us through the remainder of this season, because under state contract, you have to take a minimum of 40% or 60% of what you order, and you can't have no more than 140% of what you order. And we're waiting on our last loads, and that puts us at our maximum of 1,680 tons for this year. But we're in good shape. Shrewsbury Borough, about 2 weeks ago, was completely out, as was Cador's Township. They exceeded their 140%, so we helped them out with a couple of loads. So we're expecting to get about $8,000 back from them for reimbursement for the salt. So we're roughly around $43,000, so I think we're in good shape for the remainder of this year in our budget.
How do you account for the fact that we were fortunate in having so much salt left over, or apparently left over, because we're assuming that spring will be here soon. But did we just order extra salt this year, or is it this normal amount we normally order?
No, we did. Normally we get around 100% of what we ordered, but this year we're at the 140% mark, which is the max we're allowed to take under state contract.
Thank you for that.
A lot of municipalities across the state are in the news.
Yeah.
But you guys did good with that.
Yes. The next report was the engineer's report, of which you have a copy in your packet. Any questions or comments on that? And finally, the planning commission. I guess we have their official minutes. So that completes our reports. Now we have number 10 on our agenda is supervisor comments. And do either of you have any comments at all? I have something, I did talk to you about this, both of you.
Paul asked me to put this up on the
Yeah.
wall.
Some of you may be aware of an ongoing situation in our township with a fire hydrant tax. It's been bannered about for several months at least. And it was kind of featured, or a lot of attention was drawn to that tax by some letters that were submitted to the county papers, which weren't very kind to the board and to certain members of our staff. And the last letter that was in was a week or so ago, from one of the board members, Sue Fox, who's not here tonight, but anyway, she made a number of comments which were misleading. I'll say that. I have to say that, but it's the truth. So this is a response to her letter. I asked Todd specifically, I said, you have every right, since you were being dragged through the mud, you have every right to respond to what she said. There'll be no letters coming from the township, but we do need to respond to her, I would say, misleading comments. And the first one had to do with the timing of all this and how this item was made known to the residents of the township and the board and so forth. And Todd lays out the fact that, in spite of Sue's claim that it was first presented on December 3rd, 2014, the fact was it was first discussed or alluded to on October 30th, 2013, and that on 6 other occasions it was discussed. Finally, it was voted upon November 12th, 2014, as part of the budget approval or adoption. The next claim is that the township did not include any, it's not non-profit, what's the term?
Tax exempt.
Tax exempt properties. And the township has the option of including them or not including them. And it's an administrative decision, and Todd made the decision not to include them. So that's the point that needs to be made here. And we'll discuss that later on in the meeting under that particular item. And also, anytime you enact new tax legislation, particularly in this situation, involves a distance of 780 feet from each hydrant in regard to the properties that are going to be assessed or taxed. It's almost inevitable, or understandable at least, you aren't going to get it 100% the first time. There are going to be some properties which are left off, perhaps, and some which should be not included, which are. And Todd's been working on that with some citizen input ever since this matter came up. And he's making progress on it. And this first year, we should have everything worked out. So the next year, when tax notices are sent out, it's more inclusive or more correct. That's just the nature of the beast. Anytime you measure 780 feet from a hydrant and then try to include all those homes, we have lots of hydrants. It's understandable that it's not a simple process. And it's not too difficult to leave some out and maybe include some that shouldn't be there. The next question was fact that the ordinance does not have the specific number of properties which are included in this tax. And that's not the nature of this kind of ordinance, because the number's going to change over time with new additions and so forth. So there's a very good reason why it was not included as part of the language of the ordinance. It just doesn't work that way. And then finally, Sue states, we should have had more time and information on this before imposing a new tax on the people, and we should not be doing business this way. I mean, it's kind of an inflammatory statement. Imposing a new tax on the people, I mean, and then we should not be doing business this way. And then the response of the board is, Sue was aware of this over a year ago, and provided details as early as October 1st, 2014. She has sufficient time to review the material provided by the township manager. She had numerous opportunities to object to the hybrid tax prior to December 3rd vote. And then finally, if Sue was opposed to a hybrid tax and was not aware of it before December 3rd, why did she vote on November 12th in favor of advertising the budget, which included the hybrid tax? So I know that's pretty quickly. You want to add anything to what I just said?
Well, the only thing I just want to clarify regarding these tax exempt properties, the reason from an administrative point I did not include them from the start is because we have a real estate tax and we have a fire protection tax in place, and those properties do not get taxed on either of those issues as well, or those taxing authorities. So that's the reason why they were not added. Actually, there's a couple of them that are tax exempt that do not even have an assessed value. There's zero assessments. So they do not currently get a tax bill. And that is the reason why that they were not included. And I did talk to the solicitor, and that section 1802.2 states that the board may, doesn't say shall and they must, it says they may, so they have the discretion to provide exonerations and so forth. So that was the reason behind that.
Thank you. People are very cynical about government in general, and anytime you criticize the government, particularly when you're part of that government, actually, they fall all over themselves to jump on the bandwagon. This is government again. And you don't very often see anything positive about Shrewsbury Township in the paper. Letters to the editor, I should say. Most letters are written for a different reason, and they're negative. But this township, and we don't toot our own horn very often, but this township's done a lot of very good things. We provide the basic services, roads, snow removal. We have 80 miles of roads we have to manage. We have to provide trash pickup, recycling. We have parks. We have a 22-acre park, Miller Park, and we have a Hugh Park, which is another large park. We have 3 or 4 smaller playgrounds involved with these parks and elsewhere, which we're updating significantly this year. Pretty much all new equipment, landscaping, all that goes with it. We continue to work on Miller Park to improve parking and so forth. We have one of the best environmental records of any township in Pennsylvania. We won an award about 8 years ago for our work with protecting streams and slopes and open space protection and all that. I could go down the list, but I don't want to bore you too much. Todd's done an exceptional job as township manager. And we've never had a complaint from anybody saying Todd did not respond to my request, Todd didn't do this. I've never given that one complaint the whole time he's been here. And we aren't necessarily easy to work for either, but he's been a huge help to this township. And it bothers us on the board when he's attacked unfairly. Anybody else want to say anything else? I just want to make it clear of our position on this on this issue. Hopefully, never have to talk about it again. Hopefully, there'll be no more letters to the editor, anything of that nature.
Can I say something? I was
Certainly.
gonna say, I remember,
Can you come to the microphone, please?
Yeah.
Come on, Tony.
I'm just, Tony Avagat, 273 Prospect Circle. When I did do research, if you remember the last time when I came, I said I went through all the minutes, even your budget, and I never saw anything about the hydrant tax. So where was it in the minutes that you're saying, I mean, just the top part, when you said October 30th, the budget meeting?
Yeah,
Don't
the
you-
October
don't you
30th
put
is when it
those-
was first discussed. It's not noted in the,
Right, that's what I'm saying, I went through every.
but it is
every
noted
little
in the
minute
May
I
7th.
didn't See it until December 3rd.
It is noted in the May 7th. There was a discussion about the possible hydrant assessment.
In the May 7th board
Yes.
meeting?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll have to go back and check that out, because I definitely said I didn't see it until then. And then I wasn't, and of course, I'm gonna go to the second one. I'm not really knowing much about voting or, making motions and things, but if you said it was gonna be 811, don't you stick to that number, or do you just use that as a general and you can change it? I mean, when you make a motion, I'm not sure how these motions go. If you can explain that, when you make a motion for something.
I mean,
Not that I know we made some changes,
Yeah.
I know we did.
no, I mean, when someone made a motion, because the number was used because that's the initial number that we had. And I think
Right,
I think when someone made the motion, they simply said, I make a motion to approve the ordinance that will assess, 811 properties.
Right.
And again, the solicitor can correct me if I'm incorrect, but what sets the legislation and what is the law is what's within that ordinance. Now, if
It's
the ordinance,
780
if the ordinance said 811 properties, then it's a
Right,
different
right,
issue.
right,
And every time a house is built or,
right.
a house is condemned or something, we'd have to change the law
Yeah.
every time.
So do you, now that we've gotten all that changed, do you have the correct number now, or are you saying it's
Well,
still incomplete?
No, I have all the information, and we'll be going over that later in the meeting, but before I can finalize everything, because I know you have a record request in,
Yeah.
I want to make sure you have the correct information, but some of that's going to depend on whether the board acts to exonerate. I have a couple properties need exonerated, some additions, and the tax exempt we need to
Because
do.
I know in that initial list you had given me, there were churches on there were, properties that you are now exempted.
And if you allow us to get to the end, yeah, you'll see, I have them listed, what's exonerations and what's additions and so forth, so.
Okay,
Could
We'll
you,
get to that.
I'll get
we'll
that.
get to, can you give Tony at some point a copy of all that? Or what you have, what we have?
Well, she actually has a right to know
Yeah,
request in,
that's
so
one
she, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
going to do that.
I just did an extension so I could give her accurate information.
Right.
Okay, but anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, this letter really shed an unprofessional light on what the township does in managing and operating the township. The rebuttal that we have here, could we put this on the website or possibly even in the newsletter? Is there a big production with doing that?
I think it should, I'd rather see it on the website than the newsletter.
Okay,
Yeah, I would too, because just the space of the newsletter.
right.
It would dominate too much. All right, well,
It's going to be incorporated into the minutes.
yes.
I'd like to bring special attention to it on the website.
You want to incorporate, you want to make a motion and also incorporate it in the minutes?
Is there,
Well, it'll be in the minutes, and I guess the question is, that when you say incorporated into the minutes, do you want it verbatim what's on this sheet? Because otherwise, it'll be a summary of what you present.
I'll leave it up to you to decide the best way to manage it, given space considerations. I'll get to you.
Well, I don't want to do the verbatim thing because we just went through all that not too long ago in the minutes. So if you want to,
if this is going to be in the minutes, why don't we make mention of this rebuttal in the newsletter? Okay, and bring attention to the fact that it is online in our.
Well, why don't we just put that online, it'll be indicated in the minutes, then also add it to the newsletter to see it online.
I'd rather see it, I'd rather see that the fire hydrant tax be a small separate article in the newsletter summarizing what it is, and how it's gonna affect people.
Yeah, but if you want, but then have them reference this online.
Okay.
Todd, that's your production, what's your recommendation? You understand what we're trying to
Yeah, I understand.
communicate this?
Well, without taking up an enormous amount of
No,
space.
it was just, no, we could just do a little block, and reference it and direct them to the website.
I think that would be very appropriate.
I failed to read my notes when I was explaining what a wonderful township we have. But I think most of you are aware, we have the lowest tax rate for the real estate tax, the lowest assessed value of any township in your county. It's very, very low. So, and this tax, there's a new number. We said it was an average of $24 per household or per assessed value. And Todd said it's now down to the latest number is $22 per household per year. Those are within 880 feet, whatever it is. 780. All right, we beat this to death. Yes, Leonard, come on up.
Well, I think, real quick, is if you're going to do this, you have every right to put it in the newsletter or everything. But I think the January meeting should be in entirety to be published also.
The entire.
Right, on the meeting. Otherwise, some of it was cut out, am I correct?
It's all there.
I mean, on what they recorded this meeting, it's not edited at all.
It's not.
It's all, no, I'm correct in saying that. No, it's,
Otherwise, so the
Are you talking about the video or the minutes, written minutes?
the written minutes,
Okay.
were they in terms of Cynthia, of what transpired with that?
There's a summary. It's not verbatim, Cynthia said.
I have it on video.
Yeah, the videos are available online, and they are not edited, nothing's cut out.
except her situation was.
Right, which the board voted on.
That was the only exception, when she kind of did what she did.
But why?
Why was it taken off?
Yeah. That's all, I just want to know why.
You were here. You
No, I
heard me.
know I was here. That's the reason why. I mean,
She made a serious accusation against a member of our.
They were accusations without merit. There's no,
okay.
there's been,
But beyond that, a motion was made that if her accusations are proven to be true, it'll be put back in the minutes. But we don't want to be a vehicle for destroying someone's reputation.
I agree with that. But I mean, I think is you can do a rebuttal, but I think in terms of Susan Fox, I'm not, quote, defending her in terms, but I think that it is, I think it's getting, a little bit overboard too on that. I think that this board really is so dysfunctional. I mean, I've been coming here and it is totally dysfunctional. It is, I get between one and another vengeance. I get the feeling of that, one attacking the other. It is dysfunctional and it just shouldn't be.
Well,
it's an election year this year.
Well, it's more than an election year. It hasn't just come to that. And that's no excuse. That's
No, I'm
no
asking
excuse.
you to throw your hat in the ring.
Oh, I know that. Oh,
Well,
I know that.
that's beside the point.
I worked for you when you were to be elected, and I worked, and for you also. So, I mean, I know, you expect certain things, but we don't, well, let me put it this way.
Go ahead, Leonard.
It's very simple. There was a guy named by the name of Edmund Burke. I don't know if he was one of the greatest statesmen. And he said, we elect these, basically what we elect you. And you are not true to your obligation. If you don't use what is best and do what's best, but just listen to what we say. We're putting you in here is because we feel you know better, okay? But at the same time, we have to feel confidence in you. And I'm telling you, it's just not there. It's just not there.
Well, would you state your name? You give us your name and address?
It's Leonard Aberbach, 273 Prospect Circle.
It bothers me when you put us all in the same boat.
I'm not saying in the same boat.
Well,
but I'm
but
just-
the board is dysfunctional.
Right,
Now, I'm chairman of the board.
right,
That doesn't give me a feeling of great joy
right.
when you say that, because I try to conduct myself, and I think these other two gentlemen do too,
I'm not saying that.
in such a way that we're a credit to the community, and we get things done that need to be done, and more in addition. So when you go around the field and say the board's dysfunctional, I mean, you know, that's a general statement which should have about 50 footnotes to it.
Well,
You can say certain people on this board do not always act in a proper way, but to make that broad statement and condemn the whole board,
I'm not condemning, I didn't say the
No, you
whole
said-
board,
you said
I'm
we're
saying it's dysfunctional. If you have one member, or two members of a board, or three members of a board, or anything, and you're not working together, that is dysfunctional. If everyone doesn't have to be dysfunctional in that, but the board itself is dysfunctional when they can't work together.
well, I'll give you something to consider. And of course, we don't, I don't want to tell you what to say, but
Yeah.
you could say, I attended the board meetings I have for some months,
Yeah.
and there are certain members of the board who at times don't enhance the reputation or the function of the board. You could say it a little more differently than saying, the board is dysfunctional, and they'll be damned to hell's fire for eternity. I mean, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't make any of us feel happy when you condemn all of us.
Well, I was president head of the Northwest Advisory Council for Board of Education for 8 years. And we advised the school board, not part of the school board, and we advised them and everything with big participation, 150 people at a time, the county executives, everyone was on all this, every month and all there. And you know, if someone was just on that board, if they were dysfunctional, it was stopped. It was stopped. If anyone, Dutch Ruppersberger came up and someone started spouting off or something like that, it was stopped. It was stopped immediately. And that's what I'm trying to say. Okay?
All right. Go back to the agenda. We don't always agree with figures, but we love and respect all of you, okay? I mean that, you know, we have agreements with figures sometimes. Okay, anything else under supervisor comments? All right, under old business, installation of 9 fire hydrants in Forest Lakes.
Yeah, if you recall last month, this was on the agenda for consideration by the board. We had a representative, David James from Forest Lakes, who was present. And he asked the board to postpone this, excuse me. And he did, he met with the fire chief, and Dave called me, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, and said that after talking with the fire chief, that they're in agreement with what York Water Company proposed. And this is the same, somewhat of a crude map, but gives you an idea where those hydrant locations would be. And it would be the 9 at the locations listed in York Water Company's letter. So just need authorization from the board for them to proceed with that installation.
I also got a call from David James this afternoon. He said that they're very supportive of the 9. So I'll make a motion that we approve the installation of 9 fire hydrants at Forest Lakes.
I'll second.
Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 All right, B, under old business, zoning ordinance amendments.
Okay. received, I think most of you were probably at the last meeting, we received a series of comments from York County Planning Commission. I believe it's a total of about 18 comments. We had the staff reviewed them, we addressed their concerns or provided them with an explanation. And then, if you recall, after the last meeting last month, there was a subcommittee that consisted of the chair and vice chair of the board, the chair and vice chair of the planning commission, the township engineer, the township zoning officer, and myself, along with Gil Malone, who was the planning commission solicitor. And we went over some of the items, and actually the only article that we really discussed was Article 4, which was the ag zone. I'm not going to spend time going through each and every one of these unless the board has some questions or comments. These will be made available hopefully tomorrow. If the snow's not too deep, we'll have them available online. You can go on there and read through these comments. And what you'll see here, what we'll be sending back to your county planning commission is basically what's highlighted in yellow is what they're going to see as additional revisions since they received the initial set. Does the board have any questions other than Article 4? I have something I want to go over Article 4, but is there anything else you have other? If not, I'm going to jump down to Article 4 unless you have something else. We had a lot of discussion of the subdivision of parcels, and if you recall, for anyone that was at the meeting, initially it was proposed by the board that you can subdivide your 50,000 square foot lots and you're done. You can no longer subdivide the minimum of 50 acres. The recommendation and what's been put back into this and the board will act on tonight is that you'll still have your 50,000 square foot lots that you can subdivide, and you'll also be able to continue subdividing minimum 50-acre lots, just as we've had before. And our current ordinance had it wasn't the clearest. We did receive legal opinion from Gil Malone, who is Planning Commission solicitor, stating that the current ordinance, as well as this one, will not allow what they call residual lots. And I'll bring, I think I have, bear with me here a minute. I was thinking I had some scenarios here. Basically, what it would do is, I'm going to use, for example, if you have 110 acres, you can sub off, of course, your development rights, which are the 50,000 square foot lots. And let's say that gets you down to, say, 105 acres. You could sub off a 50-acre parcel, and then you could have a 55-acre parcel. Some of the interpretation in the past has been that you could have two 50-acre parcels and then a residual parcel of a 5-acre tract. That will not be permitted, and it hasn't actually been under our current ordinance. So the bottom line is when you subdivide, the maximum lots are either going to be 50,000 square feet or a minimum of 50 acres. Does that make sense to everyone?
Please, if you have any questions to ask, I mean,
It's 50,000 square feet, is that 55 acres?
No, 50,000 square feet is only like 1.15 acres.
A lot size can be less than 50,000 square feet if it meets all the normal percentages and so on, but in order to preserve farmland, that's the biggest loss you can have. Unless there are extenuating circumstances which are mentioned in the text. If you need a larger lot for a septic system or driveways, you can have a larger lot.
So basically what it is it's back to what it was before. That's being proposed to be reinstated. The other thing is this paragraph here has caused a lot of heartburn. We had some discussion on this. We went back, had the solicitor Gil Malone fine tune some of this language. The committee hasn't met since that time, so we've been doing exchanges through emails. And it's not the best way to do it, but it's tough to get everyone together. What I'm going to show you here is that section 5 is what you see here. Basically what it says, that the parcel can be divided into 2 or more lots, after which the transfer contain at least 50 acres of land, plus 50,000 square feet of land for each development right assigned to that lot. What this says is, if you have a 50-acre parcel and you have a house or you don't have a house, you also have to add 50,000 square feet for the house that's going to sit on that 50 acres. But that's not how the current ordinance is, and that's not what the intent of the committee was. So you'll see here on the right, what's proposed to the board this evening is, it's still basically the same thing. It has to be a minimum of at least 50 acres and 1 development right. And that development right would be for the 50 acres. But then if you want to assign any of your additional development rights, then you need to add at minimum 50,000 square feet for each additional development right. So say you have a 50-acre parcel, you need 1 development right. Say down the road you want to plan to subdivide 3 building lots off at 50,000 square feet, you're going to have the 50 acres plus 150,000 square feet. Because the idea is that you can't assign 4 development rights to 50 acres and then a couple of years down the road or next month come in and subdivide, and a month later you're down below that minimum 50 acres. It defeats the purpose of that regulation. So that's what this top section is as far as editing. And down below, it talks about no farm created or modified having at least 50 acres of land shall subsequently be permitted to subdivide lots, assign land to dwelling units allocated pursuant to section 403(1) of this ordinance, or locate uses permitted by special exception so as to reduce the amount of land allocated. To me, it's somewhat redundant as to what we talked about up here, is basically you can't subdivide off any lots or assign any additional development rights that would drop that lot to less than 50 acres. Now, one thing the solicitor, Gil Malone, added, and I had a conversation with him, and it was not discussed at the subcommittee meeting, is he added language that talked about special exception and accessory buildings. We did not have that conversation, and staff is recommending that that be removed because we don't understand, with the special exception you're talking about a use, and this is dealing with development rights and subdivision of land. So we don't think that that belongs in there. And again, we've talked about certainly, you know, the 50 acres, you have to add 50,000 square feet for additional lots and so forth. And the other thing that he added, and again was not discussed, is to prohibit that you reduce the size, and this was Gil's language, size of such farm to less than 50 acres. Initially he had, so as to reduce the amount of land allocated for the agricultural use. So in that case, you may have needed more than 50 acres. So Gil did agree that that should come out. So the board has before them everything that came out of staff and the subcommittee. The only thing that's different than what has been presented in your packet is this subparagraph 5 here. And this is what staff recommends that the board replace with what's in your packet.
Thank you. Question, I have a question about special exception uses. They can't be any greater than 50,000 square feet as far as the lot size?
Well, that was the question and how this all came about. Let's get up here to the uses by special exception. Here's principal and accessory uses by special exception. You talk about composting facilities, a feed and grain mill, hunting and fishing preserve, you're not gonna have that on 50,000 square feet. You get into intensive agricultural operation, again, that's not gonna be a shooting range, it's probably not going to be in 50,000 square feet. And I don't know if Solicitor Buff has any input regarding the special exception. Maybe there's a reason it should be kept in, but we don't see it as far as staff.
No, I agree with you. I don't see the need to sort of mix up the notion of uses that you're putting on the property and the size. Because that's what this provision of the ordinance is doing, right? It's controlling the minimum size that you can have in a tract or a lot.
Well, it should be,
Go ahead.
well, section 1404, it's called supplementary regulations, and it further defines the guidance of the zoning hearing board when this use can be permitted.
Correct, and if there's size limitations, it would be addressed under the supplemental
But
regulations.
I don't recall too many of these uses having size limitations at all. And it might be hard to do in some cases.
But then you get back to what he has in there, what is going to dictate that?
I think what we need to do is let it the way it is, and if we have a problem with it later on because of what actually occurred, then we need to go back and take a look at it again. That'd be the most expedient way to handle this.
We haven't sent anything to your county planning yet for additional review. I can tell you, and I was asked by Keith Hunnings, the zoning officer, to pass along to the board that he does not think Gill's language will work regarding the special exception.
Why?
Again, you go back to requiring, you're going to require a development right for a hunting and fishing preserve, and contain it to 50,000 square feet.
Right. I see your point. Right.
There's a lot of these uses you're not going to contain. The hunting and fishing preserve could be the entire tract.
You and I talked about this before, and I think these uses are somewhat limited in the amount of the likelihood that they're going to take place. I don't think it's a serious threat to the agricultural zone. Otherwise, I think it would be a problem.
Right.
Because we're saying, in effect, it's listed here, but if you can't get it on a little over an acre, then you can't use it. You can't utilize that right. All right, let's move on here.
So, if the board has any other questions, I would ask that you make a motion to authorize that I forward these revisions to your county planning commission, and would ask that you include this modification to what's in your packet.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And we have to understand that we're back to your county planning for the second time.
Correct.
And if we make any significant changes or any substantive changes of any type, it's not going to go back to them again. So I think we've been over this enough. I'm pretty confident with this. We made some compromises, but are you guys okay with this? We're going to be back and forth, all right? I'll call for the vote.
May I say something
Yes.
before you do?
Please.
I hesitate to be the second attorney that's involved in this, because Gil has carried this. But I'm just going to point out something. I see that he's injected the word lots or farms into this. I think you're going to find your county planning is going to say that you're adding confusing language and that this should just be about lots.
Okay.
Because that's what it really is.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Now, I might be wrong, they may not catch it, but that's the kind of thing that they look for. This is all about lot size. I understand it's in pursuit of a 50-acre tract being substantially appropriate for farms and for agriculture. But all you're talking about is lots.
Well, now, you haven't reviewed this intensively or at all, this latest draft. It's a critical article 4.
I followed the emails because I'm interested in it.
Okay, so
But
you follow.
as I said, you don't need two attorneys in it. You have one.
Well, but I want to thank you for following along. So if you did see something that was way out of order, you would have brought to our attention.
Right.
Okay. All right,
That's it.
we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
I vote aye.
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 I want to thank Todd, thank our attorney and the staff. They did an exceptional job. This has been a 2-year process. And there's a lot of give and take, and I think they have a good product. Thank you all for that. Thank God it's over. We would hope it's over, right?
It's getting closer.
Yeah, it's not over. All right. Wolf Road and 851 improvements, this is just an announcement.
Yeah, this is just informational. Of course, you know, the diverging diamond at exit 4 and 83. This is down at Wolf Road and East Forest Avenue, 851. This is a separate project, but it is in conjunction. It's 2 different funding sources, 2 different project leads and so forth. But what they're going to be doing is making some improvements to the traffic signals in this intersection, as well as making it, I think I mentioned last month, 4 lanes from Mount Airy Road down to Wolf Road. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking at. This will have a median strip, and it'll be, I forget what the name, Renaissance, is that the first road, I believe? Again, this is in Hopewell Township on this side, so just want to let you know that's a conceptual drawing of what that intersection will look like.
Thank you. At the last meeting, you announced having attended the meeting with the county and the state officials that exit 4 is going to be greatly enhanced as far as the flow of traffic through it.
Yes, yeah, I think we talked about
Yeah,
that.
we did. I want to just mention that along with this is going to be a godsend to us, because right now that area is impacted rather severely at times. Okay, fire hydrant assessment. You have some new information on
Yeah,
that.
I do. I gave to you in your packet. There's a memo outlining where we're at with this, and everything on the administrative side of it is completed. And here's what we have. One of the things, I'm going to explain this, but the board's going to consider 3 actions this evening. One is whether or not they're going to exempt or exonerate tax-exempt properties. The other one is we have a list of additions. And when we say a list of additions, it's additions to the tax duplicate. Tax bills have already gone out, as you know. This addition list will be in addition to those that have already been taxed. This list has not been, but they will be. Exoneration list lists some tax-exempt properties that have been taxed, some that have not, but we want to make it official whether or not they're going to be in or not. But I'll go over each of those lists when we get to them. Just to give you an idea, if you include the tax-exempt properties, the tax duplicate, and this isn't face amount, this is what's already been billed out to the property owners, is $22,800, which is 867 parcels. If they include the tax-exempt properties, it would be a total of 37 parcels with an additional $1,284. The exonerations that I'm showing here is 9 parcels, which are, I believe it's 3 parcels that were billed improperly, along with the township properties. Because I think it makes no sense for us to write a check out of the general fund and turn around and deposit into another township fund. What you see on the other side is what it would be if the tax-exempt properties are exonerated and excluded. Again, the tax duplicate, that stays the same. The additions are reduced down to $25 and $497, and the exonerations would increase to $992 for 21 properties. Which the revised, and again, this is the face amount, doesn't indicate what it would be at the discount amount. With the tax exempt properties is $23,800, well, roughly $23,900. and excluding the tax exempt is 22.3. The projected hydrant rental, you know, with the addition of the 9, and then we have 2 additional ones that they have not added but will be adding that were missed from last year. We're going to be around $21,000. And when we get into a full year with Forest Lakes and the other 2, we're looking around $22,000 a year. And you can see we're pretty much right on the money. So that's a summary of that. Then here's a list of the additions. It gives the parcel ID number, street address, the name, their assessment amount, their tax amount, and what their system, which system they're in. And that totals $497. These are parcels that have not been taxed through the tax bill that you received in. Then the exonerations, which are those that would be removed from the tax duplicate. What you see down here at the bottom, I'll explain that first, are all the township properties, and then we have 3 properties here that were billed in error, which was probably a keying error, because actually, I don't know if it happened on our end of the county, but we had to key these numbers in, and then the county also had to key each of these individual numbers in, because it wasn't township wide. So you can see what that total would be just for the township and those 3 is 205. And this is just what's in the tax duplicate. And the ones up above are tax exempt properties. A couple of them were taxed, some were not. Does anyone have any questions on any of that? So I guess the first action I need from the board has to do with the tax exempt properties. If we're going to exempt them from the fire hydrant tax, or if they're going to be included in the tax.
I think Jeff made a good comment earlier this evening. Well, they're already being exempted from the other taxes.
Correct.
And to get just a little bit of a tax, get a tax bill for this one item, the fire hydrant tax, doesn't make much sense to me. And there's not a lot of money involved. I just think there's more than losing gain. Bill and Jeff.
I agree.
That's what I feel.
So we'll entertain a motion not to include tax exempt properties. I'll not make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, then I need a motion from the board for these additions to include them to the tax duplicate.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And then the last is the exonerations, which includes those tax
You're
exempts.
asking for an awful lot from us.
I am, but this is the last thing on this subject.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would think this was a lot of work. It's just an illustration of the detail and the amount of work involved in working this up, so it's as accurate as it can be. And it obviously cannot be done in the first cut like we did earlier this year, that we're making great headway. Yes, sir. You want to,
Just a quick question.
Sorry, you saw something about.
Okay.
I don't need to be.
That way we can hear you on the video.
Yeah.
Jeff Rogers, 590 Oakwood Road, New Freedom. I'm just not familiar with the term duplicate, like a tax duplicate. What does that mean?
Yeah, the tax duplicate, I didn't bring one along. But basically what we receive, it's probably about this thick. It lists every parcel within the township, and it lists the owner's name, and it lists their assessed value, and then it breaks down each tax, county, township, the fire, and so forth. So the duplicate is the official record of what's been sent out to property owners. So when we're adding them, they're already listed as property owners, but they're not included for the fire hydrant tax. So we're adding those. And when we talk about the exonerations, we're adding them to the tax duplicate. Because at the end, it gives a grand total. For these nearly 3,000 parcels, you should collect X amount in real estate, X amount in fire protection, X amount in hydrants. And the auditors use that number when they audit the books to make sure that what we received in income versus what's been turned over to tax claim. So if we start billing additional ones and exonerate some, but don't track that and have a record, they won't be able to reconcile those taxes at the end of the year. I hope that makes sense.
A good question. Thank you for that. I think some of us up here weren't even aware what a duplicate was, because Todd is already heavy lifting, but
And I do want to give credit to Wendy, because she's the one that did a lot of this detail and did a lot of the research.
thank you, Wendy.
The errors were mine.
Okay, where are we here?
They were, she took my lead.
Okay, so, that gets us through item number 11, farm item assessment. Now we're in the new business. Discussion is good pretty quickly. Comcast cable franchise fee audit. Todd?
Yeah, the township renewed its 10-year franchise agreement with Comcast, July of 2013. We were generating $21,000 to $22,000 a year in revenue from cable franchise fees. The year that we initiated the contract, it increased to $30,000, and for whatever reason, it's dropped back down to about $23,000. The company, or I should say the firm, not the company, the firm that helped us renew that contract was Cohen Law Group out of Pittsburgh, and they do a lot of cable television franchise work. And we went through a consortium of other York County municipalities in 2013. They are now coming back and offering a group of municipalities, again, to do an audit of Comcast books to make sure that we're receiving the proper franchise fees on all the services which we're eligible for. And it's actually 40 different items, because it's not just cable TV, it's the telephone, it's the internet, and it's a whole long list of things. They've done 80 some audits in Pennsylvania in the last 2 years, and they have realized about 73% of their clients have realized that they're being significantly under paid for those franchise fees. The fee is $3,900, a one-time fee, and given that we had that one spike the year that it was adopted and we're back down to where we were, I think it would be money well spent to the township to have this audit conducted. And again, I mentioned in my memo that we did not budget for this specifically. I wasn't aware of this service, but I propose that we would take that out of the legal services line item.
I'll include that in my motion to go ahead and go through with this contract of the firm you mentioned. And it brings up another item too, that is that the township is not in debt. We're free of debt. We're free of debt, other than from some temporary incursions with like the sites of the surplus. We have to put money up front. So not only do we have the lowest assessment, or rather property tax, but we also have no indebtedness to speak of. So trying to get a more of a positive spin on things around here and look at some of the good things that are being done. I'm up for re-election in 5 years. I got to start. That's a bad joke. All right. No one. Thank you for smiling. Okay. All right.
So you made a motion?
I made a motion in this second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Vote aye.
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 Transfer the auto rights agreement. We discussed something, I think, today or tonight regarding an application. Would you explain what a transferable development right is? And then we'll just give us an overview on the application before us.
Yes, I will. I'm going to bring up the zoning ordinance revisions because it'll help me explain it a little easier. And if you own property, land within the ag district, based on what that lot or parcel consisted of on November 10th of 1976, if you fell within this category of the size of your parcel, you were assigned a certain number of development rights. So if you had at least 60 acres but less than 90, you had 5 development rights. One development right has to, at minimum, has to stay with the parcel, the main parcel. In this case, if there was only one dwelling unit, you would have 4 development rights, meaning that you could subdivide off 4 50,000 square foot lots. But once that subdivision took place of those 4 lots, the subdivision is done. There's no more subdivision allowed on that property. Now, the development rights can also be sold and transferred if you own property on another, in the township, and you have another parcel under common ownership. You can transfer your development rights from one parcel to another parcel. But again, only if you own both of those parcels. Otherwise, you need to sell them, if you want to sell them, to one of our residential receiving districts. So some people have done that, have sold them. Some people have the deed or the development rights verified, and we record an agreement that just is an agreement and an understanding between the property owner and the board that yes, you have X amount of development rights. Some people have that agreement prepared, but also have the deeds written and recorded as well. And may not do anything with them for a long time, or they may use them later when they go to subdivide. But that's what a development right is, based on your acreage on November 10 of 1976 of your parcel. So it requires us to go back and trace the deeds back to see if your parcel is today what it was on that date in 76, or if there were subdivisions, and that's going to determine your number of development rights. So what we have before us tonight is we have a property owner that's on Hanover Street in, Manchester Street in Glen Rock. They have roughly 33 acres, and they just want the township to verify the number of development rights that they have. So the board has before them the agreement this evening, and if they're okay with this, the board will approve the agreement, and then it'll be recorded at the Recorder of Deeds office.
And you're recommending that that application is in order?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
I vote aye.
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 We get 2 seconds. That's it. Motion passed. Correspondence.
I have one other item that the board needs to address under new business, and that has to do with the executive session regarding the appointment of an attorney to represent the township in the appeal by Sue Fox and Jeff Van Voorhees against the township.
I'll make a motion to use Gilman.
I'll second that motion.
I vote aye.
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 Any correspondence, Todd?
No, you have copies of what we received.
We do. And there's nothing in addition to that. This is the final opportunity for anybody who came here this evening to speak on any subject. Oh, Gene, you had your hand up a while back. I didn't.
I'm not going to bring the meeting out. We'll talk about it after the meeting.
We welcome comments. Particularly they're fine to it. No positive comments. Any negative comments? All right. No one wants to speak? All right, I'll make, adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion is second, all in favor.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.